I'm always pleased to just introduce this young man. In 1 month's time, we'll be announcing him. I bet there'll be cake in 1 month at this church. Because he'll be starting to work with us, and he just graduated from Bible school just this very week. Hey, let's give it up for him for that. He just graduated. And his family was all coming out. His family's right over here, and we're so thankful to have you with us, Smiths. It's just great to have you joining our church family, and we want to do our best to take care of this guy. He's becoming part of our family, so are you. But we're just so pleased that he's going to come and share with us today about the internship, about his heart, and we just like every time that he gets on stage because he's coming to be with us, and he's got a heart for this Comox Valley and believe in some of the same things that you are for here and for now. And so would you just help me welcome Daniel Smith?
Yeah, have fun. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you. You guys are awesome. It definitely feels like family here. It feels so good to be back. I was comparing it. I was like, what can I compare this experience to? And it's almost like when I was a kid, I had a bedtime. My bedtime was usually 9 p.m. And whenever we had company over, I always had the worst experience because I'm fairly outgoing, so I love being with the company. And my parents would always say, okay, Daniel, it's time to go to bed now. I know we have company over, but you got to go to bed. So I'd be in my room hearing all the laughter and all the fun and stuff like that. And I wouldn't be able to go down because it was my bedtime. And I had to hear all the fun going on. And I was in my room, like crying in my pillow. And I was getting all frustrated. But this is what it feels like. It feels like this whole time I just had an early bedtime. And I've been missing out on all the laughter and all the fun that is going on here. So that's kind of what it feels like. So thank you guys for letting me stay up a bit later tonight. So I'm pretty excited. This is awesome. I'm super excited. So my family is here. I'm super excited. My parents are here. Mom, Dad, let's have you guys stand up. If it wasn't for them, If it wasn't for them, I don't think this last 4 years of Bible college would be as successful. They wired me some snack money, and they called me and consoled me when I was crying and stuff like that, so that was fun. So this is Patrick, Andrea, my parents, Gabriel, Jordan, and my sister Tanisha, and we also have additional members to our family. 2 Novembers ago, my parents started foster care. So we opened up our house to foster kids. And so we actually had 4, if you were to ask us 2 weeks ago. And then 2 weeks ago, or last week, we lost our 2, well, we didn't lose them. They went to their family. Two of the girls, their names are Stormy and Ivory. They were young girls. They actually went to live with their grandpa in Jamaica, so that's a good thing. We're happy about that. And then we still have the 2 brothers that are Jaden and Kai. So Kai, who is the younger of the 2 brothers, and Ivory, who's the older of the 2 sisters, are about the same age. And last year, they went through a treacherous time of their life that is often referred to as the terrible twos. Has anybody heard of the terrible twos? So I don't really like calling kids terrible, but so we can call it the terrific twos because it was terrifically overwhelming and annoying and stuff like that. But the twos we always say because they'd be gone for daycare, and we'd always say, oh, it's about 5:30, the 2s are coming home. So anyways, we love them dearly, but oftentimes they were just a huge handful. But mainly because they were distracted all the time. They're always distracted. I remember, so something my mom would always do is take them to daycare in the morning and pick them up and bring them back home at the night. And there was one time where I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. Mom, you're not feeling too well. You stay home. I'll take care of them. I'm going to drop them off at daycare. So I'm rallying the twos, and I'm like, okay, guys, Ivory and Kai are the names. We're going to put your shoes on. We're going to get you ready. It was wintertime, so we're putting the coats on, the shoes on, everything. And I'm like, okay, so I have Kai. Kai's a high-energy kid, and yeah, he's really energetic. So he's sitting, putting his shoe on. Ivory was finishing up her snack, and then by the time I left Kai to go get Ivory over here, who's getting her snack, Kai has one boot on, and he's running around the house, distracted by something. I'm not sure yet. Anyways, so I grab Ivory, sit her down. I'm like, Ivory, you have to sit down here. She's like, okay, I'll sit down. And then by the time I get Kai, he's running. I put him on my back because that's the only successful way of traveling with him anywhere. So I grab Ivory. Ivory's doing a bit better. She has her jacket on, whatever. Kai, finally I'm able to settle him down. And yeah, so they're both ready. Finally, time to go to the car. And then as we're getting into the car, Ivory is going in, and as I'm buckling Ivory into her seat, I see Kai. I look out the back of the mirror, or the back of the car, and Kai's running towards the road. And I'm like, Kai, you can't be doing this. So I leave Ivory. I'm telling you, I think seatbelts for the terrible twos are less about safety and more about restraint. We just need to restrain them. So I didn't even buckle it. I just kind of tied her in the. I didn't tell my mom that. So I kind of tied her into the seatbelt. Ran, got Kai, brought him in and whatever. And okay, Ivory, stay there. She's like, I can't move. But she didn't say that because she can't talk. Anyways, so I grabbed her. I grabbed Kai, and then Kai's in the car. I'm like, a bit aggressive, and I'm like, sorry about that, but it's okay. Anyways, so I buckle Kai in, and finally, there's 45 minutes in, buckle them into the car. I'm out of breath. I'm like sweating. It's like, where's my Gatorade? Anyways, so I buckled them in, whatever. Get in the car. Thank God for kids music. I put them in I put their CD in, played it. We're driving to the we're driving to the daycare. They're looking out the window. They're distracted again. They're like, oh, what's going on? But this time they're restrained, so they can't run after the big truck that they're seeing and stuff like that. So we finally get to the daycare. We park in the daycare. We open the doors. I unbuckle Kai first. Big mistake. Kai runs out of the car. He's going to there's a little play center, their outdoor play center. I'm like, Kai, you gotta go to your class. So I buckle Kai, and I totally forgot that he left out the car. And then Ivory, I'm unbuckling her. She's like, okay, she's good or whatever. She jumps out of the car. She's just looking around. There's flowers, and she's loving it or whatever. And then Kai is across the way, about to get on the slide in the park. And I'm like, Kai, we gotta go to your class now. So finally, put Kai on my back. Again, I can only travel with him by putting him on my back. And I say, Kai, we're going to your class. He's like, okay. And then Ivory, I'm holding her hand. So I have the daycare supervisors are watching me, have Kai over my shoulder with one hand, and then the other hand, and he's upside down. So it's kind of, and I have Ivory with one hand, and we're walking. And they're just so distracted. They're so distracted. And Ivory running, and then finally I got Ivory in her class, and then Kai is ready to go to his class. I put him down. He's touching all the lockers on the way, and playing with his boots and taking his jacket off and screaming and stuff like that. Why can't you guys just focus? Why are you so distracted? So what is normally a 10-minute trip for my mom took me about an hour 15. So needless to say, I won't be taking them to daycare anytime soon. So I told this whole story to kind of introduce you guys to what we want to do through the Northgate internship program. We want to distract young people. Yeah, so that sounds a bit surprising, but that's what we want to do. We find this culture right now, young people, is very inward focused, very self-focused. How am I going to succeed? How can I get more likes on social media? How can I get this good job and successful career and good? How can I focus on myself? One of my mentors would say navel gazing. Everyone's looking within and kind of like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh, it's all about me. And no, look at the honey, look at the flowers and stuff like that. Yeah, so we wanted through this program teach these students that are, I always say young people, but again, I'm 22, so I can't really say young people yet. So we want to show them what it means to look in or look out and look up. So looking up at God and looking out at the need. There's a deep need in the world to seek and save the lost. There's people who are addicted. There's people who are struggling with different mental illnesses. There are people who are struggling with low self-esteem. There are people who are captive to these things. And there's so many people who are in captivity right now. And we want to train a generation of leaders who care about freeing from captivity. So it's so often to be focused on ourselves, but we want to identify, develop, and send leaders who are focused on the world, who are focused on the lost, whether it be the Comox Valley. Yesterday, my heart was broken as Robbie Taylor, stud, doing a great job in the area, informed me on the fact that there's 8,000 young, teenage students, like high school age students, and there's only 150 students who are churched. 8,000 high school age students, and only 150 who are churched. So if that's any indication of what the rest of the valley looks like, it means we have immense opportunity. Like, that's not something I'm discouraged by. That's something I'm excited by. As he was telling me, I'm like, that's why we're doing this. That's why Alan's setting up small group systems. That's why we're integrating this internship program. That's why we're doing soup and sandwich. That's because we want to seek and save the lost within this community, because we recognize that it's not about us, but Jesus has put in place a plan that is so much bigger than us. And we have the responsibility to play our role in this. So it's important that we get distracted by these statistics. We get distracted by the needs in our communities, in our neighborhoods, in our families, and we recognize that we have a part to play. We need to look up and look out at the needs. So through the internship program, again, we envision young people, young leaders who are identified, developed, and sent to a world who desperately needs them. And as I look throughout the Bible, I see tons of leaders who are distracted. As a matter of fact, as I look at my life, there are times when I was distracted. I remember summer 2013, I was distracted. I remember I was serving at a summer camp that I grew up at, and I was distracted. As I prayed and did life with these students, I was distracted. As I heard the conversations they were having, I was distracted. As I prayed with them at the altar, I was distracted because I recognized that there was a void there. They didn't really get the fact that the Jesus that they were singing about was actually real. They didn't get that if that's true, if Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever, that means some serious implications for our life. It means that it changes how we live. It means that it changes how we look. We don't look at ourselves anymore, but we live in response to who Jesus is. So I was distracted. I think it was the best distraction I ever experienced, because that's when I first felt, as I was praying for a young preteen guy at the altar, when I first recognized and heard the Lord say, this is what you're going to do for the rest of your life. You're going to be distracted for my sake. You're going to be distracted for the lost. You're going to be distracted for the people who I want to see my kingdom and to see my glory. So as I look throughout the Bible, there's tons of leaders who are distracted. We see Noah who's distracted. We see Jonah who's distracted. We see the Apostle Paul, who was once Saul, distracted by this call of Jesus. But today, for sake of time, we're just going to focus on one by the name of Moses. So I'm excited to focus on Moses today. We see Moses, again, as a child. The Pharaoh at that time released a big decree. Any male child under the age of 2, we're killing them. because the Israelites at that time were growing too powerful. And he was afraid that his kingdom was threatened. His kingdom was going to be ruled by the Israelites if they don't control that and snuff that a bit, because the Israelites were growing in number, and they were strong, and they were a big force, and they were really tight-knit and close and stuff like that. So Moses grew up, and because of an amazing, actually, chain of events, he was actually taken in by Pharaoh's daughter, and he grew up in the palace, and he was given opportunity and stuff like that. And there was this one time, as he recognized where he was actually from, that he saw a Egyptian like brutalizing an Israelite, and that he took matters into his own hands. He said, I need to save my people, and I'm going to do it in my own strength. So he takes a rock, and he kills the Egyptian. And then, because he was embarrassed, he turns into exile, and he becomes a refugee. So he has to leave Egypt, and he spends 40 years in the wilderness, and then we see Moses distracted. Let's read. Now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness, came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. That's crazy. And Moses said, I will turn aside to see the great sight, why the bush is not burned. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to see the Lord, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. And he said, here I am. Then he said, do not come near. Take your sandals off, for this place where you are standing is holy ground. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, I have truly seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because they're taskmasters. I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of Egypt, and to bring them out of the land to good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, a lot of ites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And now, behold, the cry of my people, of Israel, has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppress them. Come, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I? Again, he was looking within, he was navel-gazing, that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt. He said, but I will be with you. So God said, look at me. I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. So what's first important to note is that God's identifying us is often unpredictable. I remember I was playing basketball as a young high school kid after youth night. And I was playing basketball, I was just having fun, goofing around, and my youth pastor pulled me aside, took me out of the game, and said, hey, I have this opportunity for you. I want you to be on leadership for us. I want you to be on a leadership team. We see this in you. I'm like, are you kidding me? What do you see in me? I just goof around all the time. So this call for me was super unpredictable. Just like how Moses experienced here. Again, he was tending to the flock. He was content with how he was living. And he sees a burning bush. Can you guys imagine seeing a burning bush? I can't. So seeing a burning bush that doesn't burn to the ground but just stays burning. So it's important to recognize that oftentimes God's call in our life isn't something that we expect, or it doesn't come in a way that we sometimes foresee or are able to predict. So it's often important for us to look within and look out and look up at the call God may be placing on our life and what he may be identifying us for. So Moses, again, he was here. He was 80 years old, he was ill-experienced in leadership, and he was a refugee. In like society's eyes at that time, he would have no like place in leadership. He would be retiring. He would be tended to and taken care of by his family or by his kids. But he was called to leadership. This was unexpected. He was 80 years old. He was a bit advanced in age, and he was called this way. So it's important to first recognize that Jesus' call is sometimes unpredictable. It's important to note that when Moses received this call, he didn't say, "I'm busy," or "look at me," or da da da. He said, "Here I am." He made himself available. He said, "Here I am." Second, we see that God develops us through walking alongside us. He didn't first give Moses the staff. He didn't first give Moses the human resources, but he says, "Here I am." So it's important to recognize that this developmental piece and God's model of leadership development is walking alongside, whether it be walking alongside mentors or physically one-on-one, walking alongside God as he shapes and forms our callings. So it's important to first recognize that God recognizes and realizes our callings through walking alongside us. He shows Moses the distinction between who he is and who I am is. So he says, later on we see that God says to Moses, "I am who I am." And if anyone asks in the future, "Who sent you?" remember to say, "I am sent you." Moses was navel gazing. He was looking within, and he was like, "Okay, what's in me that I can offer?" But it's important to recognize that it's not our competencies or giftings that does anything. It's all what God puts in our life and all that God does through us. So that's an important piece to recognize. Thirdly, we recognize that God sends leaders to do radical works. At that time, again, Israel was in slavery for 400 years. So this wasn't just a 2-year thing. This means for generations and generations, for 12 plus generations, they would have been identified by this slavery. They would have been identified by being in bondage, by being subject to their masters, by being subject to this Egyptian rule. So they wouldn't have dreamt of being rescued. They would have thought we're in this and this is who we are. We're no longer God's people. But we are Pharaoh's people because we're slave to him. We report to him. We report to his rulers, his leaders, and stuff like that. So it's important to recognize how hard this would have been and how overwhelming this call would have been. But again, God gives us big calls so that he can fulfill them through us. It's not us, because none of us can do it on our own. Pastor Evan couldn't lead this church if it wasn't for the power of God working through him. This internship program won't be able to work if it's not ordained by God. So it's important that we recognize that it's not the human resources that fulfill these works, but it's all what God does through us. We need to recognize that, again, as a church, we have the responsibility to be sent and to send to the world. We can't stay stagnant. We can't just stay within the confines of the four walls here. But it's important that to notice that we do have the responsibility to liberate the captive, to free the jailed, to rise the dead. Jesus is the model of this. Oftentimes you'll see scholars when looking at this verse say that Moses' work when he led the Israelites out of Egypt was actually foreshadowing the work that Jesus would soon do. There's so many parallels. At Moses' time, there was a ruler who said, "Kill all the sons under 2 years old." And when Jesus was born, kill all the sons under 2 years old. And from that rose a leader. God often sees the need and calls the leader. But we will only receive that call as we spend that time with God. So just as Moses was called, Jesus was called, and because of Jesus' call, we can have confidence that we're not going at it alone. We have confidence that he's working through us. Jesus, in Luke 4:18-19, you guys can turn to that if you'd like. He is opening up the scroll. It would have been the book of Isaiah at that time. And he does something that's actually quite preposterous at this time. He reads this, and the way he says it alludes to the fact that he's actually fulfilling that prophecy that he's reading. He says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to proclaim the good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives and the recovery of the sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." Jesus blazed the trail for us. Just how Jesus is called to set free the captive, to free the oppressed, we are also called to do that in our neighborhoods, in our schooling, in our schools, in our businesses, in our communities. It's important to know that wherever we are sent, we are identified to do that as Christ followers. We are developed into leaders that God would want us to be in our communities, in our families, in our neighborhoods, and we are sent where we are at. Sometimes it means going far away. Sometimes it means being sent to your family. Sometimes it means going to northern BC, but sometimes it means going to your workplace, downtown Courtney, and being the best representation of Jesus that you can be. We're going to watch a video here of a guy who's a mentor of mine, who's also a partner of Northgate's. He's serving in Thailand with his family. He's a global worker for an organization called Imagine Thailand, and he's been working there for just under a year now, and he's been serving so faithfully. So we're going to see a bit of his journey of being identified, developed, and sent as a leader.
I remember being an 18-year-old kid, and I was just about finished my first year of Bible college, and I was playing NHL, and I got a phone call, and it was the director of the program who said, "Why haven't you applied to be an intern for Omega yet?" And I said, "Because I'm playing NHL, and I don't know if I actually want to do it." And he said, "Put the controller down, pick up a pen, and fill out the application." And I remember one of the questions asking, like, "What are you good at?" And I was so immature in my thinking in that moment that I had to ask my friend who was sitting at the desk next to me, "What am I good at?" And he laughed and said, "Oh, you're really good at NHL." So I wrote down, "I'm really good at NHL," finished the application, went downstairs, and applied to be an intern. And I actually answered because I don't really know like what I'm good at, what kind of gifts I have. And then they proceeded to tell me that they saw potential in me as a leader and as a discipler of people. And I didn't believe them for a moment. And then they continued to tell me what it is that they saw, and something crept into me, and there was enough of belief for a moment in what it is that they were saying, that perhaps what it is that they saw is what God saw in me. And if he saw that in me and they saw it in me, then maybe I could see it in myself. And so my development of a leader began when somebody identified something in me that I didn't see in myself. And for a moment, I believed that maybe it might be true. Growing as a leader looked like somebody walking alongside of me. When I think of the idea of walking alongside of people, I think of the idea of giving them time, because that's what my mentor and my intern, my leader at the time, gave me. They gave me time to talk with them about victories and about failures. They gave me time to experience things that I had never experienced before. They gave me time to ask questions that I was a little bit embarrassed to ask other people about. And not only did they give me time, but they also gave me transparency and opportunity to come into their life with them. When I consider the idea of being sent and when that happens and how that looks like, being sent for me as a young leader was wrapped up with being identified as a leader and having somebody walk alongside of me. Every conversation that I had with others and every conversation that I had with God was an opportunity to respond what it was that I was learning about Him and myself and other people, and therefore being sent was being sent to my mirror to look at myself and allow God to do some deep work inside of me, to be sent to my roommate, to my family who didn't know Christ, to the community that was around me that didn't know Christ. I was serving in the streets of Vancouver and then in a local church in the Lower Mainland. And I realized that the proximity of mission actually tests the sincerity of our heart. I stole that from Hudson Taylor. The proximity of mission tests the sincerity of our heart. So this idea of being sent for me used to be understood in this: I have to go somewhere. But I've come to discover that being sent is actually like being someone and going where it is that I currently am. Right now, being sent looks like being sent to my family and to my neighbors that are right here. And our family picked up life and we moved to Thailand as we responded to the call of God on our life, to a nation of 70 million people where there's less than 1% of them Christian, to help give leadership to an organization that identifies leaders, that walks alongside kids, youth, young adults, and people to help develop capacity within them, and then provides them with practical things like soy milk and water, but trains others to do the same thing.
Jesus in the Bible does not leave much margin for questioning. He doesn't leave much room for a lukewarm Christianity. So as Christians, I'm speaking to the Christians in the room right now, if that's true, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And if we're going to stand by the words in the Bible with confidence, this means we have a responsibility to do something with that. It means we have a responsibility to respond to that call, to be identified, developed, and sent to our neighborhoods, to our families, to our communities, to our workplaces. Zach was someone who was sent to Thailand. But as he said, him being sent right now is to his family. So we, again, need to make a decision as Christians. We need to say, like, God, if you're identifying me right now, what is it you're identifying me for? If you're developing me right now, what does that developmental process look like? And if you're sending me now, what are you sending me to? Thank you, Lord, that you send us. Thank you, Lord, that you identify us. Thank you that you develop us. So through the Northgate internship program, our hope is to develop, identify, and send the next generation to the work that's so needed in the Comox Valley, in Canada, and throughout the rest of the world. So we have opportunities for you as the Northgate family to get involved. So I'll be outside at the table right there. You can host, you can occupy, you can promote and pray. For hosting, we're going to give you guys the opportunity to open up your hearts and your homes to these interns for a year, so from September to June, and we'll provide that opportunity that way. You can occupy, you can commit to helping to find a job for an intern for a year so that they can work simultaneously while serving at the church. And you can promote. So you can promote via social media, whether it be sharing anything that you see posted on the Northgate site, and you can pray. So it won't just be like you signing up to pray and then you kind of keeping yourself accountable to it. It would be me sending monthly prayer requests and tracking along with you. There'd be like different prayer meetings that we'd hold specifically for the internship program. So we want to get you involved. I've learned that nothing goes as well individually as it can go in team. So I'm asking you guys to join the team because we want to launch this well. We're going to be launching this September, and we want to launch successfully. So thank you guys for being so supportive and for the work that we're going to do in the Comox Valley, in Canada, in the world, as we identify, develop, and send leaders from the Comox Valley. Because we don't just develop for our own sake, but we develop for the sake of Christ, because we recognize that there's no other call that is worth sacrificing money that is worth sacrificing, comfort that there's worth sacrificing ourselves for, than the call of Christ. If that weren't the case, I'd be somewhere probably finishing up business school, on my way to being a CEO, because that was always my dream. But I recognize that there's something so valuable about pursuing God. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? So we need to focus on the call that is greater than our occupations, the call that is greater than our families, and the call that is greater than our comfort. Because God has called us for such a time as this, a time where the church is trying to be snuffed out, where the church is silenced, where the church is policied out, to make a difference. And this is where we're going to rise up and say, Lord, the lost matter more than our comfort. And we're going to be distracted by that. So if we can stand together. Again, any questions you have, we'll be answering at the launch lunch, or if you want to shoot me a message via email or Facebook, I'd be glad to answer those. Thank you guys. You guys are awesome.
Hey, I think Daniel said something really important right at the end. He said, if I had followed what I thought I wanted to do, I would have gone to business school, I would have become a CEO, I would have done that. I'll tell you something. I'm sure there were schools seeking him for that. They were looking to identify who he was, and they were looking to develop him, and then they were looking to send him to make whatever they were trying to accomplish more successful. What's the church doing in that way? Is the business world better at identifying young leaders than us who have the eyes that Jesus has for young people? You know, is some other organization going to be better at identifying the young leaders and walking alongside them and serving with them and growing them and shaping them to become who they need? Or is the church going to identify those who need to rise up, who have something in them that they can't see themselves? And we're going to be part of watching people grow into everything they're meant to be as we develop them and walk with them and serve with them and watch the Comox Valley shaped for Jesus. I really believe there's going to be something amazing that happens with this internship. It will happen when we all get on board. It will happen when we all decide that I can take a part in this. And we're going to see young people rise up from within. We're going to see people come from across the nation, I believe, from across the province, who are going to come in and say, I want to be a part of what's going on in the Comox Valley because you had eyes to see that I could be a part of it, that you wanted to develop me, you wanted to walk with me, and you wanted to send me to every edge of the planet, because every edge of the planet needs what we have here is Jesus Christ. We need him, they need him, we believe it, and so we better equip some young people to step into it. Is that true? Amen? Amen. Amen. So you maybe need to go and chat with Daniel right outside here, see how you can get involved, but one way or another, let's be praying, let's be believing, let's be excited, because we're going to see some changes, we're going to see more. It's going to be incredible. We love you. Hey, come on back next week, bring someone with you. It's small group Sunday, and we want you to be part of that and be in relationship here in church. Have a great week. We love you all.